Charles Cullen discussing how he feels about his work. Let's start with the films. I guess we should start with that because that's where everything began. Probably about 8 years old. My dad had a movie camera, one of them old 8mm home movie cameras, and I started taking it off the shelf, putting film in it, and he'd go get it developed for me. I think it became a storytelling thing. It wasn't really that I was that interested in cameras or anything like that. I just wanted to tell stories. They always just came to me. It wasn't like I'd really sit down and tell a story. It was like the ideas just came into my head. So I would have to have some way to get those stories across, and I guess that was the way to do it was in film. It was better than me just sitting there telling stories. Another thing that as I was growing up, along came directors like Sam Peckinpah. You know, the old westerns and stuff like that. When people got shot, they just grabbed themselves and fell over. And Peckinpah and them began placing squibs and stuff underneath the shirts and blowing the holes out, and the blood packs over it and blood flying everywhere. And that was probably about the time I was hitting 10 or 12 years old. So that was amazing to me of how they were doing that. And my mother would take me to these R-rated movies and drop me off. She didn't want to see them, but I wanted to watch that. It wasn't that I was obsessed with violence, like when people look at my movies now and think this must be some kind of violent weirdo. It was more a fascination with the art of who are these grown men taking their time to put explosives and blood packs on people, or you know, parts of people flying against the wall like the old Dawn of the Dead or Taxi Driver, stuff like that. Just had these unreal effects. And I was amazed at how they did that. When she would drop me off at the theater and she'd come back to get me, and I'd say, can I sit through it again? I want to try to figure out how they did a part of this movie. And so then I would go home and do that with my films. And that is an art form, and I think that's part of where all the violence comes from in my movies, is I grew up looking at it as an art form. When I question myself, you know, what does God think about me making violent movies, then, you know, and I try to, but I know it's what I'm supposed to do. What I do, I know inside of me is my calling. So if a movie's like Super Badass, basically the whole thing is the guy trying to find salvation. And if you look closely into Night of the Bums, which a lot of people don't understand, and the preacher going back and the different things he's talking about in the different parts of the Bible about being poor, whether people are calling you a bum or whatever, he's still leading you toward not looking down on them. So I think maybe if I can do that in my work, that makes me feel better about what I do. I never worry about what's selling. A lot of times people will say, karate movies are selling. Why don't you do a karate movie? Or zombie movies are selling. I could give a rat's ass what's selling. And I remember one time teaching a group of graduate students at Holland University, and one of the professors was there who had a couple of screenplays sold. And when I said that, somebody asked me, they said, do you ever research the market before you shoot a film? And I said, no, I don't care what's selling. And he actually stood up and applauded me, which made me feel good that somebody else thought that way too. So, and I never sit down and write. I don't think good stories come from like, well, today I'm going to sit down and write a story. I think it's these bits and pieces and lines that flow into your head, and you just start scratching them down, and then it gels together as a story. I think that's a true storyteller. TV shows. Speaking of TV shows, I'm going to have a Miller High Life, my favorite beer. After shooting 5 full-length movies, going through the expense of those movies, the headaches of working with the actors and stuff, I was about to give it up. And it was just way too expensive to do, and I saw the cost of film rising and rising, so I said, well, maybe this is just something I better not do anymore. And a friend of mine had told me about the Access Channel and television, and it was a cheap way to do it. It was still a way, once again, to tell these stories. That's where my TV shows came from. And the puppets, I'd always worked with puppets as a child. My mother would buy me lots of puppets, lots of marionettes, lots of the characters off Sesame Street. And I was sick of working with people. I was tired of them not showing up. I was tired of them just complaining and their schedules, trying to work that into the movies. And all of a sudden, this whole new world opened up with my puppets. They were always there, and they don't talk back. And they're always pleased, and they do what I tell them to. So everything with the television started as a puppet show. I could sit right in my own place with 8 or 10 puppets and nobody else. I could stand behind the camera and work the puppets in front of the camera. So this became a whole new outlet, but once again it was something that had started from childhood. And a lot of people look at a puppet as a toy. They'll just look at it and kind of grin and go on. But to puppet people, and once you meet puppet people and people who build puppets or other people who worked with them, there's something that clicks. And it's really neat because when it clicks between that person and the puppet, it's like life is almost breathed into that puppet. So that's kind of cool. All right, let's cut to black and white, Kenny. Music. How about my music? Let's talk about that. Huh? The music to me, once again, boils down to storytelling. I never wanted to be the best guitar player, which you can tell I'm not, or the best singer, or some excellent musician. To me, it was one more way of telling the story. The guitar, or any instrument I have, is another way of just working along to tell another story. As far as influences on music, I grew up with, as far as rock and roll and stuff like that, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Alice Cooper, huge influence. When I was in the 4th grade, some guys down the street had a band, and I'd go down and stand in their garage, and one of them had this album laying there, and it was Alice Cooper, $1 Billion Babies. And I opened it up, and there's this man with his face painted, and a snake. And I love snakes. My dad was always taking me to snake farms. So this guy was the absolute coolest person to me, you know, around. I thought that was just fantastic. And what was kind of good is he had stringy black hair. So I could actually paint myself up like this guy, and I had a big rubber snake. And I remember trying out for the talent show in elementary school, and I sang Alice Cooper's Sick Things with a snake around me, and it was like these 4 teachers that looked like Aunt Bee off Andy Griffith staring at me with their mouth hanging open. And of course I didn't make the tryout. So, and what was kind of neat was maybe 3-4 years later, Alice Cooper sang that exact song on the Muppet Show. That was kind of cool. But anyhow, that was a big influence. Alice Cooper came to Roanoke, Virginia when I was in the 4th grade, and he came right around my birthday. So my mom bought me a ticket. That was my birthday present. So my mom drug a 4-year-old into an Alice Cooper concert. Welcome to my nightmare. Everybody was drunk and stoned, and they were falling in the floor, and police were dragging them away. I was like, why is everybody sick, Mom? I didn't get it. But anyhow, and then I would cry once in a while, and she'd have to take me out in the hall and settle me back down because they had fireworks and all kinds of stuff going on in the show. But that was good stuff. And now I hope with the stuff I write and what I do that it's around longer. Everything I hear on the radio sucks. People come and go. One group that's here one year, they're gone the next. It's like these producers or record companies are just shuffling them in and out so quick that I don't appreciate that. I like the old John Prine, Chris Christopherson. I'm a huge Chris Christopherson fan. David Allan Coe. That's good music, and those guys were never very popular on the radios. They didn't play a lot of their stuff, but they were probably the best songwriters around. So that's how I feel about my work. I think that everything out there right now is wide open for the taking. I wonder with TV, I think television basically sucks. You get a show like Survivor, and you get 10 more shows like Survivor. I was approached one time by a guy in Los Angeles who was working with MTV, and he had gotten word about some of my shows, and he wanted me to send a couple out to Los Angeles, and I did. And he said, I think MTV will take this, but we want you to model your show like Jackass or Tom Green. And I said, I've never even seen those shows, and I don't want to be another ripoff of somebody. So when you're ready to take it for what I do, then you can take it for what I do. And I think the whole country needs something new in music, television, and films. And I'm coming at you.